This video is an overview of the Salk Institute project. First, I'll be going over the drawing, then I'll be showing you the inside of the enclosure. On this page, we can see the parts list. It comes included with a digital temperature and humidity sensor, also known as DTH. We have one PAR light sensor, one I2C temperature and humidity sensor, one Pearl controller, one 8 relay output module, two 4 relay 4 analog output modules, and one 5 analog input module. Over here, you can see the equipment list for your zone. This is zone number 1 for house 501. And we have one 8 output module, two 4 relay 4 analog output modules, and one 5 analog input module, giving us a total of 16 relay outputs. And we have 8 analog outputs as well as 5 analog inputs. On this page, we have the equipment connections to the Pearl controller. Here we can see the PAR light sensor. This is connected on our 5 analog input module on input number 1. Here we can also see the DTH. The DTH is connected to the Pearl on COM 1. And here we can see the I2C temperature and humidity sensor. It is connected to the Pearl on our I2C input. We can also see the rest of the customer equipment here. We also have an Ethernet connection. Here is the layout of our enclosure. Here's the wiring diagram for the connections to the Pearl controller. Here we can see our 24 volt DC power supply. It is getting 120 volts AC power coming from the wall. This power supply is then converting it to 24 volts DC to be used by the Pearl controller, as well as our Ethernet switch. Over here we can see the DTH. The DTH is connected to the Pearl on COM 1 with 3 communication wires and 2 power wires. It uses a 22 gauge 4 wire shielded stranded twisted pair. Next we have our 8 output modules. We have a total of 8 channels. The first 6 channels wired through our high voltage contactors, and channels 7 and 8 are for the shade curtain open and close. Next we have our first 4 relay 4 analog output module. We have 4 relay outputs and 4 analog outputs. Same with our second 4 relay 4 analog output module. We have 4 relay outputs and 4 analog outputs. Here is our 5 analog input module. We have a connection here on input number 1 to our PAR light sensor. And we also have an additional 4 analog inputs left open for any future equipment connections. We also have a connection to our I2C temperature and humidity sensor connected on our I2C input with these 4 wires. And here is a schematic for our iDrive motor controller. you'll be making your connections here for the motor and here for 120 volt AC. Next, we have the schematics for our high voltage contactors. We have 6 contactors K1 all the way to K6. And this is the equipment that will be wired through these contactors. Lastly, on this page is common sensors used with the Pro controller. Here we can see the DTH. And here we can see the I2C temperature and humidity sensor. This is the inside of the enclosure for Zone 1, House 501. We have a built-in iDrive 300 for the shade curtain. And on the inside, we can see the Pro controller, our 8 output module, our 2 4R4A modules, and our 5 analog input module. The Pearl is powered by 24 volts DC coming from the top, and we also have an Ethernet connection. And on the bottom, we have a connection to the DTH. The DTH is connected to the Pearl on COM1 with these 3 communication wires and 2 power wires. Here is our DTH. It is giving us our inside temperature and relative humidity values. It also comes included with an extra 100 feet of wire. We can see its values on the Pearl. On the main screen, we can see the inside temperature as well as relative humidity. Moving on to our 8 output module. This 8 output module has 8 switches which control the outputs on the bottom. These outputs from 1 through 6 are wired to our high voltage contactors. You want to wire your high voltage equipment directly to these contactors. For low voltage equipment, you can wire them directly on the output. As a demonstration, I will open and close these contactors using the switches on the module. These switches have 3 positions. Auto, all the way to the left, which means it's controlled by the Pro controller. To the middle is off, and to the right is on. So as you can see, this first one opens up relay K1. So I will now close it, turn it on. That's K1. We have K2, K3, K4, K5, as well as K6. Next, we have our 4R4A module. It has 4 relay outputs and 4 analog outputs. As you can see, we have connections to the heater, irrigation, and on the analog side, we have connections to the LED lights. Same with the second 4R4A module, we have connections to the irrigation as well as LED lights. Lastly, we have our 5 analog input module. We have a connection on the top on input number 1 to our PAR light sensor. We can see the values of the PAR light sensor on the Pearl. If we scroll right, we can see that it's giving us a reading of the inside light. Next, we have a connection here on the bottom on our I2C input to our I2C temperature and humidity sensor. Looks like this. it is giving us a backup temperature reading in case the DTH were to fail. We can see its values on the Pearl from the main screen. If you scroll right, you're able to see the backup temperature reading. You're able to see your equipment list and all the channels from the main screen. If you scroll right, you can see all of your equipment and its status. At the bottom of the panel, this is where you'll be making your connections to the motor, and this is where you'll be making your connections to the 120 volt AC. Over here, we have 120 volts AC power coming in, going through our circuit breaker for easy power shutoff. Then it's wired to our step-down transformer. This step-down transformer is sending 24 volts AC to our power supply, and our power supply is converting it to 24 volts DC to be used by the Ethernet switch as well as the Pearl controller. During installation, you want to make sure to drill from the bottom to prevent voiding the warranty, as well as preventing against any moisture buildup. This is the inside of zone number 2 for house 401. It has a built-in iDrive 300 for the shade curtain. And on the inside, it shares the same configuration as the previous, but now with only one 4R4A module. So we have the Pearl controller, the A output module, one 4R4A, and the 5 analog input module. We have a connection on COM1 to the DTH, giving us the inside temperature as well as relative humidity. We also have an I2C temperature and humidity sensor. We can see its values over here. And we also have a power light sensor connected on our 5 analog input module. And it looks like this. We still have the 6 contactors and a connection to the motor as well as the 120 volt AC. Lastly, here is the inside of zone number 3 for house 301. Once again, we have a built-in iDrive 300. We have the Pearl controller, a output module, one 4R4A, and one 5 analog input module. We have a connection to the DTH, giving us inside temperature and relative humidity. We have a connection on the I2C input to our I2C temperature and humidity sensor, giving us a backup temperature reading. And we also have our power light sensor. You have connections to your motor as well as the 120 volt AC. And we also have our 6 contactors.